Hey guys, this is going to be a little behind the scenes tour of my topiary. I just am in the process of putting together a webinar about topiary that you guys will be able to access later. But I thought I'd just give you a little tour pointing out some of the kinds of plants that I like to use for topiary. And you can see that it's really nothing special. It's just their shape and form and how they look in the landscape. So come on and I'll show you some different varieties. These are just a bunch of tabletop ones that I put together for the webinar. It's just boxwood, rosemary. Here's a laurel that I just dug up out of the landscape. But these are all tabletop. So come this way and I will show you some of the more common types of plants that I use in large pots in what I consider to be topiary form. So I really like basic geometric shapes. I think best of all is topiary. This golden fortuny euonymus is just one of the very common large-leaved euonymus. I pruned it into kind of a globe and I roughly encourage it to keep that shape over the years. I've probably had this in a concrete pot off of my back patio area, I would say for at least a dozen years. I do practically nothing to it. It illuminates this space. It doesn't have to be watered a lot and I really just love it. These guys, they always remind me of kind of like satellites. I don't know why. But these large boxwoods I got, I think about 5 years ago. I did find these at a nursery. This is a Green Mountain boxwood. I have 3 really large standards of these. I leave these out year round. I don't obviously have to do a lot to them. They maintain their good looks. They're in really large concrete pots that I don't have to move. I basically just water them. I check them periodically for spider mite, but other than that, they are relatively carefree. I do put stones and gravel on the top. You guys are always asking about that, and I do that to keep squirrels out and moisture in. I need to do another little top dressing on that. Now, if you come this way, over to the area that I think of as kind of a bistro garden, I've got another boxwood topiary that is planted in the ground. And here is an idea, guys. This one started out as kind of, I think it was kind of in a conical shape, a Christmas tree form, and it started to lose that shape. It had some damage on it, and I just noticed that it had a pretty good stem, strong trunk to it. So I just pruned it up into a standard form. So sometimes a plant that's been damaged can make really good fodder for a topiary. Over here, I love to use topiary that march up and down steps. So this is just a baby gem boxwood. This one's from the Southern Living Plant Collection. And it's probably my favorite kind of boxwood if you want to create something that's in a square form or a cube form. It grows, it's got smaller leaves that grow very tightly together. And I like the way it kind of mimics and accentuates the square shape of the wicker pot. This is a eugenia that is not cold hardy. I have to bring it in the winter time, but it's so easy to grow. It really likes full sun, but can handle some shade. I have had this one again for I don't know how many years. And it sometimes pouts a little bit after being in winter storage in a friend's greenhouse, but I bring it back out and it does just fine. I love the way it gives punctuation and added height to the corner of this little porch. This is just another golden-leaved euonymus that I pruned into a double ball shape. These are inexpensive plant guys that you can find practically anywhere. It's just a matter of looking at the plant itself and its form to see if it would be a good candidate. That's why sometimes I find that plants that are misshapen or a little bit scraggly sometimes prove to be the best candidates for topiary in general. And then I just love the way that these architectural forms look against things that are loose and kind of fluffy. So let's go into the backyard itself. Here is another large standard boxwood on a stem. Again, I love the contrast. Pretty soon all of these hydrangeas are going to be leafing out, and they'll be beautiful and billowy and fluffy against the geometric architectural form of the boxwood on standard, and also these little boxwood balls that I have running up and down the backyard. And I basically kind of position them to look as if I've just tossed some bocce balls or some bowling balls or something across the backyard, and that's kind of where they ended up. I like that rhythm and repetition of that globular form across the space. So there's another one. I've got some more boxwood balls back in here. These are mostly Green Mountain, I believe. This is wintergreen. Again, try different varieties and see what works for you. A lot of times I'll just try whatever I find available at my nursery, and why not, especially if they're on sale. This is another small-leaved Eugenia. You usually can find these in nurseries and garden centers later in the season because they do like the hot weather, and it's one of the few plants sometimes you can find in July or August. It's always a real treat. You can sometimes find them already in topiary form, or you can topiary them yourself. This one was pretty tall when I first bought it, and I think I've had this one for about 5 years. So they can have longevity. Here is a pancake arborvitae that I clipped into a small globe. It was really fluffy before, but again, I like that tight spherical form against all of this other stuff that has a looser form and spills out. I'm shaping a golden Oakland holly right here into just a classic pyramidal form. So come on back. I'll show you some other, I guess, maybe more unusual plants that I like to use as topiary. Over here, I love this one. I'm especially proud of this one because this was just a blue point juniper that the birds planted that just started out as a sprig that was maybe 5 inches tall. And I noticed that it had a strong central stem. I just let it keep growing. At first it was in a tall, narrow, cylindrical shape, but eventually I pruned it into this double ball topiary form. This did not cost me a penny. I just noticed that it was a good candidate. I left it in place, and over time I shaped it in a way that it was already inclined to be. So sometimes really good topiary practice is just identifying what you already have and what might work. It doesn't have to be an expensive hobby, you guys. This is a prized possession of mine. It was a gift from a friend of mine who's also a landscaper, a very good gardening buddy. This is a smoke tree, a golden smoke tree, and it came on this standard form. It's really beautiful in this faux bronze pot. Now, this is also the beauty of topiary. It can be moved. So that's the advantage of planting it in a lightweight pot. When it gets really, really hot in the summertime, these leaves will scorch and it won't be able to handle this really intense exposure where it is right now. So I can move it into another area of the garden that's a little bit more protected. So those that are a little bit more finicky, that you might have to relocate over the course of the season, you might want to make sure that you put them in a really good looking but lightweight pot. Here is another non-traditional candidate for a topiary. This was in topiary form when I got it, but if you need a really tough plant for southern dry, hot gardens, this would be it. This is an Arizona cypress that's in a double ball form. I can keep it out year round. I love its blue-gray color and the fact that it's just a little bit unusual. This would be a plant that you could find very easily in a nursery or a garden center, and you could prune it into this form. So look for things that are in kind of a Christmas tree conical shape. See if they've got a good, strong, straight stem. That way you can prune it to your liking if you want this kind of poodle form. And then again, you'll just see scattered around that I just have more boxwood globes. Some of them I let remain kind of fluffy. Some of them are tightly clipped. Here is another pancake arborvitae. And I leave these and I locate them by the fact that, again, there's a rhythm and a repetition, not only of the same plants, but also of the plant form. And I just love round spheres. So you'll see that in my garden a lot and accented quite frequently in different kinds of garden ornament. There's a common arborvitae in the back that is nestled underneath this, what's called a Jardin birdcage that came from Gardener's Supply. A very, very common plant. It started out as a gallon size, and I was probably under $6. That's about 3 years old. It's very happy there. Again, a common plant that I have transformed into something special just with my clippers. And the more you do it, the more practice you'll get. Don't be afraid, just go for it. Just like a bad haircut, it can grow out. I have a couple of boxwood cones that flank the entry into the potager. And once you get inside, I also consider hedges to be a form of topiary. And this potager was planted maybe 25 years ago, all from gallon-sized plants. I planted all of them myself and just started shaping them over time. It was a relatively inexpensive project, not difficult. I did it all myself, start out with small plants and just, again, train them in the way you want them to grow. Here is just basically a standard tall oval form. I really like the way this looks. Topiaries are often used to punctuate garden spaces, and I like the gold variegation on this and the way it picks up other golden elements in my landscape. This is a lavender topiary that I've had for I don't know how many years. A lot of you will ask about watering. And do I mostly water by hand? And yes, I do. Now, in the spring, it's not much of a consideration, and really in the winter, it's not. A lot of these go to a friend's house in a greenhouse. They're watered for me there overwintering. In the summer, I do have to water them pretty frequently, but that's the value of putting them in large pots. The larger the pot, the less frequently you have to water them, but the more important it is that you mulch them in something like gravel to keep squirrels out, keep moisture in, and just because I like the way it looks. Then this type conical shape is repeated with these arborvitaes in the flower beds in the potager. All of these are rosemaries, and all of these started out as just small cuttings that I gave to a friend of mine. I don't have a greenhouse, so they started these as just cuttings, and then once they got to be large enough, brought them home to me, and now I train them and tend them and shape them over time. One thing you want to watch out about with rosemary topiaries is they do have a tendency to get spider mite, so I use a horticultural like safer soap or something along those lines, something that's garden safe, to help with spider mite. And rosemaries need to be watered more than you would think. And then I've got some more topiaries in training back here. I've got some more rosemary. I love olive trees, which have something of a topiary shape. This is a bay tree that I may or may not shape. This is a pineapple guava. This came from the Southern Living Plant Collection. And then I love germander. It also makes a wonderful herbal hedge. It's an herb. I like the fragrance of it. It lends itself to clipping, and I like using it just in multiples in little pots. These were all started from very simple cuttings. Inexpensive. It just requires some training over time. So that kind of completes our little tour, at least most of it, in the backyard. And I hope it inspires you to start looking at plants, even common plants, in a new way.